know the female reproductive system? My teammates will explain us the uterus. They will explain us how it works, its anatomy, and some diseases happen there. Let's check it out.
How much do you know about the reproductive system?
I don't think you know that much.
We're going to show you everything about the uterus and the ovaries.
You're going to see that all of this is easier than what you think.
The uterus and the ovaries are the main organ of the female system. They are in charge of producing ovules and of fertilization, of course.
The best way to see the uterus and the ovaries are by using the frontal plane.
Of course, because from this angle you can see other parts of the uterus.
The uterus is part of the uterine cavity, near the pelvic zone.
Have you ever wondered about the miracle that takes place in the uterus? It is pregnancy. The baby starts growing inside the uterus since the moment of conception.
Pregnancy occurs in 5 stages. The first one is ovulation, where the ovules send small eggs to be fertilized with the sperm.
The second stage, the ovary goes to the fallopian tube and the uterus can be ready to fertilize.
The third stage is when the egg waits in the fallopian tube 24 hours to be fertilized.
What happens if the egg doesn't receive any sperm? Well, it's easy. The egg will disintegrate and your hormones will go back to normal levels.
But what if the egg does receive sperm? If this happens, then it's going to be called a zygote. It will travel to the uterus to get implantation, and after that it will develop to a baby.
That if you're pregnant, you need to take care of your body. You should not smoke, get in drugs, nor drink alcohol.
If you have lost babies before or have a sexual disease, you should go with a special doctor.
What's very sad about endometriosis is that it causes infertility, either blocking the way of sperm or eggs.
The most common disease in the uterus is the endometriosis. This is when a tissue that should be inside the uterus is outside of it.
The best way to check if you have endometriosis is to make a biopsy, and depending on the gravity of the case, you will either need medication or a surgery. The worst thing that could happen is that you get removed your ovaries and your uterus.
Some organs that you can relate to the female reproductive system are the vulva, which are the external part of the female reproductive system. And in the other one that you can compare is with the male system. They have the same functions like reproduction and the creation of ovules and sperm.
Some organs that are near the uterus are the bladder and the rectum, which are behind it.
The endometrium is very important because it plays the role of menstruation and pregnancy. And the myocardium is the great part of the muscle of the uterus.
The internal structure of the uterus are its 3 layers: ovaries, vagina, cervix, urethra.
Well, now we know all the scientific stuff, but what about the historical facts? How do you think people were in other times?
When the scientific revolution started, people began to be more curious and more interested in human anatomy. The first man to dissection a body was fallopian.
Scientists get so curious about this phenomenon that caused women to be irritated, angry, and stressful. And they got out that menstruation was in relation with all of it. So they thought that the uterus was the one in charge of this phenomenon that was in human women.
The phenomenon was called hysteria. People started creating more solutions for it, but they never find one.
No, you won't know what's coming next. People were so ignorant that they thought that women would only take care of the fetus for 9 months in the uterus. They believed that the sperm that came from man was kind of magical, and it was the one creating all of the baby.
Disgracefully, women were very lower than men because of the reproductive system. And that made inequality of gender to length much more.
He had a theory and then he did an experiment with animals, and then he concluded that the semen was magic.
Hysteria still had a solution to come, and people were desperate for it.
Scientists then concluded that if women have sex, they won't develop hysteria. So the woman that has these symptoms would be hesitated to have sex with guys.
By the 19th century, people still believed that hysteria was chronic and incurable.
When the French Revolution started, curiosity and knowledge were in a bigger range, and science was more advanced. So people started to want to find out more about the uterus and science.
Thanks to the technology and the interest in the human body, scientists could discover that hysteria was really a disease.
In the American Revolution, Thomas Willis discovered that hysteria was not a role of the uterus, but it was a role of the brain.
On the American Revolution, experiments started to be made by specialized doctors.
Now, we shouldn't forget that Falloppio was the first one to show us how really was the uterus. Thanks to him, we could use models to see how is the real shape and the location of the uterus.
Doctors now knew that hysteria was not a disease, but a normal change in women.
Now, hysteria is not very common. Women can treat hysteria before it happens to them, so its level of percentage reduced in a great number since the beginning of times.
Do you know which nutrients help the uterus?
Its name is iron, and it helps to red blood cells to produce faster.
But why is it important?
Remember that women pass through menstruation, so they lose a lot of blood, and they need to repair it quickly, and iron helps them.
You can find iron in food like liver, egg yolks, and red meat.
So now you know, if you want to take care of your uterus, you should prepare really delicious dishes with these ingredients.
After our investigation, we can say that advances in science are pretty impressive and that people's knowledge is increasing every day.
The scientific revolution was a base, so all the French Revolution discoveries and American Revolution discoveries were made. It's obvious that today we have better technology, but it's thanks to all those discoveries made in those times.
Now we have solution and cure for almost everything, so we can officially say that the uterus is not a mystery anymore.
That was cool. Now we know more about the uterus. We can say that we are good doctors. Hope you like it. Thank you.